And as enemies rise faster than allies, salvation cannot come from one hero alone, but from many.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Young here and welcome to an Elder Scrolls Online news update. Sorry about not uploading videos in a few days, I was flooded with tests which I finally got over with. Anyways, let's dive right into it. Today I'm gonna talk about an article that ZeniMax released called Ask Us Anything, Ebonheart's Pact Part 1. I'm guessing they rounded up some frequently asked questions to answer for us. Here are all the important information to get out of this article. First up, those wondering how much influence your alliance or race choice will have on your experience, ZeniMax states that each alliance will have their own unique quests and storylines. What race you choose will also influence these aspects a little bit, but most influential is what's layered on top of the races, the 3 different alliances. So if you really want to explore the entirety of the lore of Elder Scrolls Online, your safest bet is to play a character in each alliance. Each alliance will have their own underlying stories, histories, and politics players can experience. Essentially, each will evoke different flavors. Next up, they talk specifically about the Ebonheart Pact, the alliance that consists of the Nords, Dark Elves, and Argonians. The question essentially asks how Dark Elves and Nords could be part of an alliance, when history shows time after time a constant distrust between these two races, and if, despite this alliance, there is still turmoil among them. During the time of Elder Scrolls Online, these races put their differences aside to fight a common cause and enemy, but of course there are those who aren't too fond of this alliance, so on a high level differences have been set aside. But look at the trees among the forest, and you will see varying opinions and feelings. Some people are more open about how they feel and will reveal their approval or disapproval of the alliance, while others will keep their feelings close to their chest and just go with the flow. Now here's some juicy stuff. This article also goes into how similar Morrowind will be compared to the original game. The single-player Morrowind took place in the island of Vvardenfell, north of Morrowind. In Elder Scrolls Online, however, players will mostly be visiting the mainland of Morrowind that surrounds Vvardenfell. This will allow the developers to flex their creative muscles and give players new locations to explore, since Morrowind's mainland hasn't ever been fully featured in any Elder Scrolls game. This doesn't mean that players won't be visiting Vvardenfell, just don't expect to have access to the whole island, maybe in future expansions or DLCs. Speaking of DLCs, one of the questions in this Ask Us Anything session pointed to a map showing all the alliances and noticed certain areas were grayed out, with no alliances associated to them. According to ZeniMax, this map is not an accurate representation of what locations will be accessible when the game launches. It's just a map to give a general idea of where certain alliances are located. They do confirm, however, that the world of Elder Scrolls Online will constantly expand through expansions and DLCs, which will allow access to areas inaccessible during launch. As for specifically which locations will be available at launch and which ones won't, that isn't something they're revealing quite yet. Now previously we talked a bit about Morrowind and familiarities Elder Scrolls veterans will be seeing, but now let's talk about how accurately Elder Scrolls Online will represent locations in previous games in general. The team is taking great care in making sure that the lore, history, and visual of each location embodies Elder Scrolls and that they're familiar to fans. So yes, confirmed locations such as Windhelm from Skyrim and Cyrodiil from Oblivion will definitely feel familiar for Elder Scrolls veterans. Do keep in mind, however, that the game takes place 1,000 years before the events of Skyrim, so certain things will be different visually and culturally. Stories and scenarios will also, of course, be different from the location's respective games, but for the most part, expect to drool from nostalgia. And finally, speaking of Skyrim, there's a big question that I'm sure many people will want answered. Will there be dragons in this game? The answer to that is a resounding hell yes. Players will discover dragon temples throughout the Elder Scrolls Online, even finding familiar ones from its single-player counterpart, such as Skyrim's Goldafen. So expect the lore of the dragons to also be more fleshed out in this massive upcoming game. Now for a little extra, here's a wallpaper that Bethesda released on their official Elder Scrolls Facebook website to celebrate 500,000 likes. Congratulations Bethesda, ZeniMax, and Elder Scrolls, cool stuff. For those who don't know what this wallpaper is showing, it is another confirmed location, Daggerfall, located in High Rock's southwestern region. So yeah, feast your eyes with this as we await more news updates. That is it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to YongYea to be updated on Elder Scrolls Online along with other AAA title games such as Skyrim, Fallout 4, Grand Theft Auto 5, Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, and more. Also stay tuned for my Skyrim cinemas with tons more coming when I'm done with my final semester this December. Thank you very much, and Yong out!